Good morning. It's Monday, August 25th. I'm Phil Streible, Chief Market Strategist at Blue Line Futures. So we're seeing some profit taking take place here in a lot of different markets across the board, specifically the silver market, down about 1% here at 38.67. That's down about 40 cents on the overnight session. So can these equities, can they continue to rise with them at all-time highs? What derails the rally in gold and silver? You got Bitcoin crashing over the weekend, and a rotation is really taking place here in a lot of different markets. So let's get into it here. So Powell's message at Jackson Hole had unleashed one of the biggest cross-asset surges since April here with a more dovish tone that investors had anticipated. Silver climbed about 2% here on Friday, and he said that with policy and restrictive territory that the baseline outlook and the shifting balance of risk may warrant adjusting the policy stance. It doesn't say that he's definitely going to cut rates in September, but it comes about as close as it can get given the data between now and then. So equities, they do tend to rise here when the Fed starts to cut rates, even with the markets close to all-time highs. So what I'll be watching here is going to be that August CPI report, the August employment report, recession probabilities. Are they rising? Are they falling? And then for sector styles, it's really volatility and momentum. Those have been the best factor performers 3 months prior to an interest rate cut and 3 months after. And there have been 8 instances that you could backtest here over the past 40 years when the Fed has been holding rates unchanged for 6 months and then finally cuts. So you look overnight, you got US futures, they are ticking a bit lower, and the attention turns to one of the biggest market tests of the central bank's September policy meeting. You're gonna have Wednesday, you're gonna have NVIDIA's earnings, you're also gonna have the PCE data come out at the end of the week here. So you look at NVIDIA, their earnings and revenue growth has been up about 80% year over year, and can this momentum continue? That's really what traders are looking for clues on as far as the equity market. So the firm's $4.3 trillion market cap is about 8% weighting in the S&P 500. So it makes it really this critical stock here across the world. Now you look at the calendar, you do have these 2 big events. So Wednesday, you're gonna have those earnings report come out by NVIDIA, and then you'll have the core PCE data on Friday. We need to either break out back above the 6,500 level in order to keep this rally alive, or it's really 6380. If we cross below that, it can open up the door for 6220. So that's really your trapdoor level here is 6380. So we'll look at some of the option gamma. We'll also look at where the dealers, where they're holding a lot of their positions and how they're positioned on there as far as will they be hedging and buying the dip, or will it continue to increase in volatility and momentum to the downside if we break below that level? So you look at Europe and Asia. Well, European trading, their stocks, they slipped off that record high, mostly tracking what the S&P 500 is doing. And then you go to Asian trading here, those stocks rose on optimism that the Fed will cut rates in that next month here. So you saw the MSCI Asian Pacific Index rise about 1%. Now you shift to metals, you look at long dated silver contracts, excuse me, they are breaking out to the upside with some trend signal buys here, specifically in the March contract in the May of 2026. However, that negative price action overnight and the sell-off in outside commodities are a bit concerning. You do have the dollar index rising here slightly. You do have 10-year treasury yields just rising also, just a touch here. So given that silver's up about 34% year to date, it's not getting all the, excuse me, all the attention that it really deserves here. If it manages to push up this quarter and break through $40 an ounce, that's kind of the next big round number here that we're looking at. It's most likely going to grab more headlines, and then it'll also grab more momentum to the upside here as a lot of traders tend to chase momentum with FOMO buying. Excuse me. So you look across the multi-duration time frames, your strongest markets going to be Ether, going to be feeder cattle, live cattle, and then the S&P 500, the mid cap is something that's starting to gain as this rally here is starting to broaden out here. And then your weakest markets are going to be natural gas and the volatility index. One thing to note on the dollar index, you want to watch that 50-day moving average as the dollar has slipped just below it. You get into the precious metals, the ETF flows here. Well, you saw a lot of buys in the gold market, and you saw silver, you saw selling take place in silver and also platinum. So gold's year-to-date percentage change up about 11%. They only added about 2,000 troy ounces gold holdings on Friday. So a lot of that push up higher in the gold market on Friday, a lot of short covering taking place and bringing it back up to that 3,400 level. You look at the rotation, that was taking place in a lot of different markets. That's where the buying was taking place, the FOMO buying, and you saw a lot of people taking profits on the silver market as it pushed back up. So they sold about 575,000 ounces of silver on Friday here, reducing some of that exposure here. And last week's changes, well, we saw them reduce gold, increase silver, increase platinum, and reduce palladium. So you guys got any questions? You want to see the chart back? I'll be updating that. I'll be sending that out. I'm also going to put some fundamentals just below some of those on some of the bigger reasonings why we're seeing some of this positioning and some of this movement happening. So you guys got any questions, shoot an email to info@bluelinefutures.com. And remember that futures and option trading, well, it does involve risk of loss, and it may not be suitable to all investors. Good luck and good trading.